Are you going to be fighting for independence?
I think so, because it is the decision of all the Ukrainian people.
At these elections, communists will be the majority, just as we were last time.
The nationalists, they have no program, no ideas or any constructive suggestions about life here.
An evening in Kiev. Tonight there was going to be a demonstration, but it's been banned. Now instead the authorities put on an open-air concert. Hardly opiate for the masses, but the hope, it seems, is to distract attention. Half a mile away, a handful of demonstrators announced they're going on hunger strike. They demand free political parties, the freedom to protest, a free Ukraine. Once we leave, all of them are arrested. By the standards of late, a quiet evening. But just a hint of how the Ukraine, the republic Mr. Gorbachev fears most, is simmering.
The political feeling, new way of thinking, it's really important, and especially for Ukraine. Because if it will be in Ukraine, it will be everywhere. If Gorbachev will have close to him Ukraine, it will be possible to guarantee that close to everything in this country will be better. But if he'll lose Ukraine, it will be a strategical defeat. It's impossible to lose.
Disaster.
Here, unlike freedom movements elsewhere, they don't want to leave the Soviet Union. Here, they want to change the system from within.
Добрий день, діти. Сідайте.
For years, the people of the Ukraine have fought Moscow over issues like language. Today, Ukrainian is taught in most schools here, but that's nothing set against the Russification of their society. They live in the richest and most productive part of the country, yet they're taught that Moscow and Soviet Russia knows best and controls their lives. It's created a hostility passed from generation to generation, and it was bound to explode sooner or later.
Ну, мы считаем так, что Украина должна быть суверенной республикой. Вот у нас нет желания выхода из Советского Союза, потому что если прибалтийцы хотят выходить из Советского Союза, там им можно идти в объятия Швеции или Финляндии или кого-нибудь. Мы ищем новый тип союза, новый тип, когда мы будем не колониальным государством, не колонией, а просто будем существовать, как нормальные люди существуют. В европейском сообществе, как, например, существует Франция и Германия, Испания и так дальше. Мы желаем такого союза.
Naive as that sounds, the people of the Ukraine wield enormous clout, both politically and economically. The Ukraine is the industrial engine room of the Soviet Union, and stoppages here would cripple Mr. Gorbachev's experiment. In the shipyards, the car factories and the heavy engineering plants of Kiev, there are today workers' committees. Representatives have been chosen to negotiate with management. Even the local Communist Party admits there's growing support among the labour force here for unofficial unions. Alexander Shekin embodies the new breed of trade unionist. He's a post office worker, and for 12 years he was in the official party-controlled unions. Earlier this year, though, he became a founder of the breakaway labour movement set up by the Rukh nationalists. His reasons are straightforward.
Дело в том, что ситуация сейчас оказывается такова, что правительство не в состоянии вывести страну из кризиса. Получается то, что коммунистическая партия, объявившая защиту интересов рабочих как свою основную цель, сейчас от нее, по сути дела, отказалась. Она не имеет собственного курса. Интересы рабочих нарушаются буквально повсеместно. Растет эксплуатация труда.
The potential for unrest then is here, so too the issues. And in the Ukraine, it's not just the economy. Here there's Chernobyl and its legacy. Kiev's 100 miles from Chernobyl. No one here was evacuated after the nuclear disaster. Yet today, surveys show that cancer and blood diseases have risen, in some areas dramatically. Equally, vast tracts of fertile countryside have been contaminated and used as a dumping ground for radioactive waste. There are persistent reports of livestock being infected, of animals born with extraordinary deformities, and of milk showing high levels of radiation. The worst thing for these people is the lack of information. It leads inevitably to the fear that everything has been contaminated, that nothing is safe anymore. Viktor Cheryenko, a leader of the Green World Ecology movement, took us to a site about 200 yards from his home on the outskirts of Kiev.
Таким образом он заражен, а вода эта.
Here, he says, radioactive debris from Chernobyl was moved in the autumn of 1986, a few months after the disaster. This is one of a number of such sites around the city.
Гласности в вопросах последствий Чернобыля у нас нет. За это борются народные депутаты. Нам только через 3 года...
Kiev is the home of the Russian Orthodox Church. The church started here 1,000 years ago when this was the capital of old Russia. Over the years, they've had their own battles to fight, not least for religious freedom. The Russian Orthodox, for example, have been allowed to worship. Others, notably the Catholics, have not. And until now, that's divided and ruled the religious communities of the Ukraine. Today, though, even the Russian Orthodox Church supports the Rukh nationalist movement, with one warning. In the words of the archpriest at St. Vladimir's Cathedral, it would be a great pity if they squabbled amongst themselves, rather than challenging the communist system with a united front. The local Communist Party, then, and Shabitsky's successors have little time to lose. Now that Shabitsky's gone, can the party adapt, or will it confront the opposition as he would have done? Talking to Ivan Sali, the head of the party in Kiev city, you sense that it can. Here is a man who said publicly that Shabitsky should go, a man who considers himself a supporter of the Rukh movement.
How strong, in your view, is the nationalist movement now?
Ну, достаточно развитый. Наш народ, я считаю, способен на самостоятельную линию в истории в данном случае. И думаю, что национальным возрождением сегодня занимается не столько, как, может быть, вам показаться, неформальные объединения там, или в том числе даже Народный Рух. Сегодня весь народ, в том числе и Компартия Украины, занимается этим вопросом.
How dangerous is it then for Mr. Gorbachev, the situation in the Ukraine?
You see, in conditions of terrible economy, the first and the simplest solution is to escape from this house. But it's impossible to do it now, and Gorbachev understands that now if we'll start not to divide the country, but even to change the frontiers in it, it will be catastrophe.
At the entrance to Kiev, there's a monument to the motherland. Such is the mood here nowadays that the locals say she's keeping Moscow at bay. If it sounds like the Baltics, it isn't. The people here are fighting for a future within the Soviet Union, but they want to renegotiate the terms for peace. Mr. Gorbachev, then, to borrow someone else's phrase, can do business with them. The danger is that if he doesn't, they could destroy his revolution. David Smith, ATN, Kiev. The old Polish city of Lvov, the capital of the Western Ukraine, the home of Soviet Catholicism. And today, the new frontier for Mr. Gorbachev's experiment with freedom. This is Preobrazhensky Cathedral. Just 3 weeks ago, it was a Russian Orthodox church. Now it's been handed back to its original owners, the Catholics. What Joseph Stalin did, Mikhail Gorbachev undoes. And here it's a necessity. Either he tackles the explosive combination of politics and religion, or it will become yet another crisis for him. That's why he's ready to lift the ban on the Catholic Church. That's why he's going to Rome next week. Mr. Gorbachev is settling the scores of the past in the hope of buying peace in the future.
Що ми хочемо, щоб Горбачов підписав, щоб наша греко-католицька церква і церкви були всі відкриті. До приходу до 46-го року всі були греко-католицькі церкви. А що зробили НКВД? Штих і приклад. І, значить, ліквідували.
А православна прокуратура пільно кагібістам, пімenu, який дав розпорядження знищити всі церкви, закрити всі церкви, нищити тих священників, от і підчиняються тому пімену, а ми підчиняємося Папі Римському.
Following the Pope, though, is anathema to this, the Russian Orthodox Church. Ever since Stalin seized the Western Ukraine from the Poles in the 1940s, the Russian Orthodox have been in control here. They had the churches, they had the freedom, albeit limited, to worship. Only Stalin could have given one group, the minority, a monopoly on God. But it was his way of breaking the link between politics and religion, of suppressing Polish nationalism and Catholicism. Now the two churches are in conflict. God forbid, said a Russian Orthodox leader last week, the Catholics become legal. The Orthodox Archbishop of Lvov.
Они его должны ставить, но никак не врываться в православные храмы и нарушать этим мир и такую вот христианскую жизнь наших верующих.
The leader of the Catholic Church here is Bishop Vladimir Stanyuk, a man who spent a lifetime living underground and practicing religion in secret.
Такие, которых не узнавали совсем, как несуществующие. Мы при этих условиях жили, как несуществующие. И даже немного времени, даже нас до сих пор не хотели признавать, что мы существуем и требуем, чтобы нам дали церкви, легализировали нас.
Условия существуют почти такие же, как и когда-то. Богослужения отбываются в лесах, на воздухе где-то, без помещений, без церквей, в жилых домах, в комнатах. Но разница в том, что теперь все больше люди не хотят больше скрываться.
Were this happening in the more remote corners of his empire, Mr. Gorbachev might have reacted differently. But Lvov is in the industrial heartland of the Soviet Union. It's the capital of heavy and light engineering. Typically, much of the country's public transport is made here. The way these people go, then, is crucial to economic progress. No one can doubt Mr. Gorbachev's willingness to make concessions to them. This month, for example, the authorities have been dismantling the Museum of State Atheism in Lvov. Here, ever since Stalin, the Communist Party has vilified religion. The Catholics in particular, the Jews as well. The Pope had been displayed here as a warmonger. The question now is whether Mr. Gorbachev's handiwork will be enough in a climate changing as quickly as that in the Ukraine. It's not just that the Catacomb Church, 4 million strong, is coming out into the open after so many years underground. It's that the Catholics are wedded inextricably to the Ukrainian nationalist movement. Almost every day now, under the banner of the Ukrainian national flag, there are public meetings here. They're part religious, part political. The message is that now that they have their church, they have a nation, and that as a nation they want freedom. The leader of this nationalist religious movement is Ivan Hel, freed in 1987 after 18 years in prison for his beliefs.
Я глубоко верю, что именно наш народ буквально в ближайшие десятилетия восстановит свою государственность, национальную независимость и суверенитет. Наша церковь, как польская католическая церковь, стала, так сказать, катализатором национального возрождения и объединения нации вокруг ее и духовных, и национальных интересов. Именно польская церковь для нас служит хорошим примером.
Lvov on a Sunday morning proves that. This could be Krakow or Gdansk, Poland in the early days of solidarity. In the circumstances, Mr. Gorbachev's meeting next week with the Polish Pope may be a gamble. It will infuriate the Orthodox, and it will almost certainly prompt yet another conservative backlash within the Communist Party. But Mr. Gorbachev will not stop here. If he has his way, the Pope will come to Lvov next year and speak to people who look to him for leadership. This Pope will understand Mr. Gorbachev. Not only does he speak Russian, but his beloved Poland, more than most, needs Mr. Gorbachev to survive and prosper.
Keeping democracy on course is becoming a full-time job for Mr. Gorbachev. And at the end of a day like this, he could be forgiven for asking himself whether it's all worth it. This second session of his new parliament is supposed to focus on the root of the crisis, the economy. Yet they spent most of the morning trying to make the new in-house technology work. There was confusion, some bewilderment, a little exasperation about the new voting procedure. At one point, Mr. Gorbachev went back to a show of hands just to keep things moving along. This way, at least, they got a result. No sooner, though, had the president made some off-the-cuff remarks, stressing once again that perestroika is irreversible, than the arguments began. None of this was on the agenda. An MP from the Ukraine, furious about the way he'd been treated by communist officials recently. A deputy from Georgia, saying the military had covered up the murder of demonstrators there in April. And then there was Andrei Sakharov, the dissident turned parliamentarian, having a row with the man who freed him about something that's on everyone's mind after East Germany and Czechoslovakia, the role of the Communist Party. When they got down to business this afternoon, Mr. Gorbachev forced a critical vote. The issue was whether or not to debate Article 6 of the Constitution, the article which guarantees the supremacy of the Communist Party. Given the crisis within the party out in the country, it was a vote Mr. Gorbachev couldn't afford to lose. The president clearly thinks there's a limit to democracy. He reverted to the old arguments. He wouldn't stand for a debate on the party. There wasn't time now. And anyway, the party would decide, not the people. The president won, but only after the opposition, led by the poet Yevgeny Yevtushenko, had hinted at bullying tactics. How come, they suggested, that what was good for the East Germans and Czechoslovaks was not good for the Soviets? What did you think of the way that the vote on Article 6 was conducted by Mr. Gorbachev?
I think it's an inner struggle inside him between General Secretary of Communist Party and between President. And I hope President will win.
They took lunch then, having spent several hours discussing what was not on the agenda in the first place. In a country where people are crying out for action, even deputies acknowledge the danger of appearing indulgent, worse than that, irrelevant in the eyes of the nation.
People must feel maybe direction on which we'll have better results in our life. Maybe direction, maybe first step. It's impossible to discuss so many questions and to reach so little results.
Any specific questions?
And specific questions. People need results. People must see that after we start to be more democratic, we start to have something in supermarket.
Ahead now lie days of debate on the economy. What Mr. Gorbachev wants is a gradual transition to the free market. Judging by today, he'll meet opposition from all sides. And some well-known observers from the United States have their doubts he can make this work.
As someone has said, it's democracy being born, and it's not always easy. Churchill once said that democracy was the worst form of government except for all the others, and I think what we're seeing here is an experiment.
To what extent are you and other people in the West, though, looking at Gorbachev today and wondering how long he'll survive?
Oh, I think it's a key question. I don't think there's any way for any of us to know.
He's supported by the Congress, it's obvious.
and I don't see any signs of weakness in the Congress. Sure, the economic situation is not the best in these 5 years. So it certainly everything goes together.
For the moment, the president is in control, so too the Communist Party. But Mr. Gorbachev has lost some friends here today. Worse perhaps, he's used political capital to put off an issue that everyone knows has to be faced sooner rather than later. David Smith, ATN, Moscow. Sometimes in a place like the Ukraine, you have to remind yourself that this is the age of Gorbachev, and not Brezhnev or even Stalin. The other day, they buried the man who ran this republic for 17 years until last autumn. Vladimir Shabitsky was ruthless, dogmatic. He once said the only way to govern was with an iron fist. But he was loved here, and not just by those close to him, but by hundreds of thousands of people who believed and still do that the old ways work best. That's changing, of course, even in the Ukraine. But the mistake is to think that it's going to happen now, and that this weekend's elections will be a watershed for the Communist Party. They won't. What the party has, power the party keeps. That is Shabitsky's legacy.
What can I say? Everything we have here is his achievement, his and the whole party's.
His legacy? That the Ukrainian people live happily and in freedom.
There is an opposition here. It's called Rukh, the nationalist movement. Their way of remembering Shabitsky was to demonstrate outside the old KGB headquarters in Kiev and recall the millions who died here under Stalin. For these people, Gorbachev's been no savior. This man, for example, claimed 2 relatives had been murdered by the KGB in the early days of Gorbachev's perestroika. On the edge of the crowd, an election candidate, running for the new parliament as a nationalist and as a prisoner of conscience.
I think that people's movement for restructurization wins about 30% of places in Supreme Soviet, and with different results should be expected in different regions of Ukraine.
30% is a decent start for the nationalists, but it doesn't reflect the dismay felt by many, or the popular cry for change here. The Ukraine is the breadbasket of the Soviet Union. Today, though, bread is one of the few staples in abundant supply. There isn't enough grain to feed cattle. They often have to ration milk. Meat is scarce. Some have shown they will not put up with it. The miners of the Ukraine, for example. Since their strikes last year, they've removed their Communist Party bosses. In the mining capital of Donetsk, a mass demonstration a few weeks ago was enough to bring the party leadership down. But as the Ukrainian parliament broke up for the last time before this weekend's election, outgoing MPs, all of them party members, sounded sublimely confident about being returned to office. And can the party win this election?
I believe that yes, it can. Why? Because the platform which the Communist Party adopted at the plenum reflects the interests of all people.
At these elections, communists will be the majority, just as we were last time.
The nationalists, they have no program, no ideas or any constructive suggestions about life here. At the moment, the nationalists have nothing at all to offer people.
The party, then, is not yet in retreat. And one reason is that the nationalists of Rukh have fought this campaign like the novices they are. Just a few months old, Rukh is a hodgepodge of different factions. There are people who want an independent state now. Those who make nuclear power stations like Chernobyl their priority. There are dissidents who demand a Western-style rule of law. And the religious, mainly the Jews and Catholics.
Rukh is a marriage of convenience, and even at their own rallies they argue among themselves. The issue here then, unlike the Baltics, is not a nationalist victory, but what the MPs will do once elected to Parliament.
Certainly after these elections, much of the day-to-day responsibility for running the country is going to rest with these new local parliaments. And here, as in many other parts of the country, the result is likely to be a fairly extraordinary cocktail. The Communist Party, nationalists, the radicals, even the Greens. That raises the inevitable question of what sort of leadership they're going to give.
It was Lenin who said all power to the Soviets. Now Mr. Gorbachev's doing the same. The danger is that these new Soviets will be talking shops and little more. From the opposition benches, the nationalists will push for radical reforms. But the party will have a veto, and this party will stand its ground.
Are you going to be fighting for independence?
I think so, because it is the decision of all the Ukrainian people. Not only Ukrainian nations, but every peoples who are living here.
What about the economy? Are you now going to fight for the ownership of land and for private property?
I think the ownership of land is necessary to make agriculture productive and effective.
Do you see a battle for power after this election between yourselves and the Communist Party?
It is inevitable.
The party and its apparatus, certainly the KGB, is in no mood to take that kind of talk lying down. And memories are long here. In the woods outside Kiev, there's a simple monument to the victims of Communist Party rule. Today, people come here to lay flowers and buy custom fresh bread, in memory of those who died during Stalin's purges and the terrible famine of the 1930s. When they vote this weekend, they will remember that past, but that will not make them gamble on the future. There is still fear in a society like this, and fear will probably keep the party in power, even in this age of glasnost and perestroika. David Smith, ITN, Kiev, Ukraine.
Святого Євангелія читання. Ісуса Христа, просвітай, помилуй
Ні, то ще тут не.
Релігійну нетерпимість до УКЦ, але покладають цей важкий гріх. Тут ще з 30-х років діє право сильного і телефонне право. Ми присутні тут. Правда, вільна Україна, прикарпатська правда. Рада, яку зараз представляє Панцюк Іван Миколайович, прийняла рішення не розглядати нашої заяви. Тобто... Слава!
Там три і тут. Взяв і співає.
Дайте газету.
Дай спаси повітря душам наш, Богородиці Діво, радуйся, Марія, Господь з тобою, Вафлеєм, яко родила Іси Христа, і спаси повітря душам наш,
Трошки далі відійдіться, братан.
Братан, чуть далі.
Давайте, давайте. Стой, давайте назад.